My children decided I could no longer live alone and took me to a nursing home. I felt as if my world had ended, as if I were just a burden to be discarded. But as I walked through those doors with a broken heart, I found true friendship, unexpected opportunities, and a new purpose that made me feel reborn at 68 years old. Today, my life is an example of resilience, independence, and courage. I'm happy to have you here. Follow my story to the end and comment with the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. I'll never forget the moment David and Hillary sat before me, their eyes heavy with the decision already made. I could feel the tension hanging in the air, a kind of silent farewell I didn't yet understand. My heart raced as David spoke soft but firm words. "Mom, we think it's for the best." For the best? How could it be for the best to take me away from my own home? My hands trembled as Hillary finished the sentence, explaining that I shouldn't worry about anything, that the nursing home was very nice. I didn't want comfort. I wanted their presence. I wanted them to see me as more than a burden. The words wouldn't come out easily. A lump formed in my throat. I felt invisible, as if my own story had suddenly lost its value. I looked around the room trying to find support in any familiar object, something to remind me that I still had a home. The photographs on the wall with smiles frozen in time now seemed to mock me. The same children I had cradled with so much love were now deciding where I should live, as if I were a task to be delegated. I felt a mix of anger and sadness. I wanted to scream, to ask why they were committing this abandonment disguised as concern. But instead my voice trembled, weak, as if I no longer had the right to question. My voice failed me. "Are you abandoning me?" The car stopped in front of a tall, impersonal building. The facade was clean, even modern, but to me it looked like a gate to exile. My eyes filled with silent tears, and I took a deep breath to keep from crying in front of them. I didn't want to give them any more reason to think I couldn't take care of myself. David opened the car door and held my hand, as if that gesture could ease his guilt. It didn't. Every step toward the entrance was heavy, almost as if my legs refused to move. I looked from side to side, trying to find an escape route, an excuse to go back home. But there was no going back. The smell of the place enveloped me as soon as we entered. A mix of disinfectant and something undefined, maybe accumulated sadness. Strangers walked by, some in wheelchairs, others sitting and staring into space. There was no familiarity, no warmth of a home, just white walls and lost gazes. I felt my chest tighten, a preemptive longing for everything I was leaving behind. My plants, my bedroom, my memories scattered throughout the house. There I wasn't Alice, a mother and retired professional. I was just another elderly woman. When the main door closed behind me with a dry click, I was sure that something had ended. The doors closed behind me like a sentence. I was soon greeted by a woman in a white uniform with a wide smile. "Hi, Mrs. Alice, I'm Helen, the head nurse here," she said, in a tone that seemed to genuinely want to get to know me. Her friendliness contrasted with the ice I felt in my chest. I didn't answer right away, just nodded, trying not to cry. Helen began to show me the place, talking about activities, friends, and a structured routine to keep everyone active. Her words were light, but I was far from wanting to hear about activities or friendships. I wanted to be at home, watering my plants, cooking my favorite recipes, living at my own pace. She noticed my discomfort and, incredibly, didn't try to pretend I was okay. "I know this isn't easy, but you don't have to face it alone," she said with a gentle touch on my shoulder. I felt a certain relief in that genuine care, as if someone there cared about who I really was. When we reached my room, she placed my suitcase on the bed and encouraged me to decorate the space my way. "This is your space now too, Mrs. Alice. You can put your own touch on it." I swallowed hard. My touch? I didn't know if I wanted to leave any mark there. Helen said goodbye with a smile, but she left behind more than just friendliness. A seed of doubt in my heart. I didn't want hope. Not yet. On my second day at the nursing home, I was surprised by a loud laugh coming from the hallway. I followed the sound and found a gray-haired man telling a story about mixing up the time for breakfast with the time for bingo. "I'm Tommy, the new sensation of the senior circuit," he said, winking playfully. I couldn't help but manage a small smile, even against my will. Soon, a woman with a serene look approached and introduced herself as Sarah, my future roommate. She had a calm voice, with a sweetness that reminded me of old conversations with childhood friends. The two of them began to include me in their conversations as if I were already part of their little group. For the first time since I arrived, I felt that I wasn't completely alone. Tommy told me about his past as a mechanic and how the nursing home was his second workshop. Only now he was fixing broken hearts, not engines. Sarah laughed and added that Tommy always exaggerated but that he did, in fact, know how to make people feel good. It was different to hear stories without the weight of judgment, without the typical rush of people living on the outside. Between one story and another, I realized I was relaxing, that the sadness I carried seemed to be making way for something new. It was strange to admit, but I was enjoying this unexpected company. For a moment I truly laughed. On the third day, Helen invited me to try a crafts workshop. I almost refused, still holding on to the resistance of someone who believes they don't belong. But Sarah insisted, saying it would be fun, and Tommy chimed in with a joke about discovering hidden talents. I ended up giving in, more out of politeness than interest. To my surprise, the activity was light, without pressure, without the obligation to be perfect. As I molded a small clay pot, I felt a strange sense of freedom. There were no judgments, just people trying to fill their days with something beautiful. I saw other faces smiling around me, some as shy as mine was at first. In the following days I started attending other small activities. Live music, group readings, and even a walk through the garden. Slowly, I realized there was something transformative in simply being present. The silence of my room began to feel less suffocating, and the hallways more familiar. I still didn't feel like it was my home, but I was starting to build small routines. Maybe that's what adapting meant. Letting go of absolute control and making room for the unexpected. It wasn't happiness yet, but it was an important step. It was a timid start, but a start nonetheless. One morning while walking down the hall, I saw a poster on the wall. Basic computer course. Learn to connect with the digital world. I stood there staring at those words. I had used computers in the past, but I never imagined going back to studying it, especially in this context. Helen appeared behind me and smiling said, "I think you'll like it, Alice." First I hesitated. I thought it didn't make sense, that it was too late to learn something new. But Sarah and Tommy insisted, saying they would take the course too. "It'll be fun, we can laugh at our mistakes together," Tommy declared. The idea of learning with company seemed less daunting. In the first class, the simple act of turning on the computer made me feel a mix of fear and excitement. The keys, the icons, everything seemed different from what I remembered. But there was a sense of a new beginning, as if I were opening a door to something bigger that I couldn't yet define. At the end of the class, Helen praised me for my dedication, and for the first time in a long time, I felt proud of myself. I was doing something new, something just for me. A small but significant step. Maybe I could start over. That afternoon, as I opened the computer during the computer class, something stirred within me. The illuminated screen brought back memories of another time, when I worked with numbers, charts, and spreadsheets that gave meaning to my days. It was a life of logic and organization, something I had always loved. Seeing that digital environment again rekindled a dormant memory of professional pride. I remembered the hours I spent balancing accounts, helping small businesses stay in order. There was a satisfaction in seeing a complex problem turn into a clear and objective solution. It was more than a job. It was part of my identity, something I had buried under the pain of abandonment. Feeling that memory come alive again moved me deeply. I closed my eyes for a moment and could almost feel the familiar weight of my old work briefcase in my hands. That determined woman I once was still there, hidden under layers of resentment. Maybe I could still rescue a part of her, bring back something that made me feel useful and respected. The teacher showed us how to open a simple spreadsheet, and my fingers moved on their own, as if they had a memory of their own. In that instant I realized the knowledge had never been lost. It was just dormant, waiting to be called back. My heart raced, not with sadness but with excitement. The spreadsheet on the screen looked like an old friend. At the end of the class, Helen approached, observing my discreet smile in front of the spreadsheet I had just created. "You have a knack for this, don't you?" she asked, more as a statement than a question. I nodded, feeling a warmth in my chest I hadn't felt in a long time. "I was an accountant for decades," I confessed. Her eyes lit up, as if she had just discovered a hidden treasure. "There are people here who need this," she said, referring to the nursing home. She explained that many residents had small financial questions, confusing pensions, and overdue bills. The idea seemed too bold at that moment. I was still adjusting, trying to deal with my own life, and now she was talking about helping others. I spent the rest of the day thinking about it. Me offering accounting services from inside a nursing home? It seemed almost ironic. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. It wouldn't just be an occupation, but a way to reclaim who I was, to get my voice back in an environment that I believed had stripped me of my value. Helen was patient. She didn't press the matter further at that moment, just planted the idea with a confident smile. "Whenever you want to talk about it, I'll be around," she said, with that tone of someone who truly believes in you even before you believe in yourself. "There are people here who need this," she said. Days later, I summoned the courage and accepted Helen's proposal. I put a small notice on the bulletin board: "Help with personal finances. Speak with Alice Collins." That same day, a cleaning staff member approached me, embarrassed, with a stack of papers in her hands. "I don't know if I'm doing my taxes right," she said. I smiled and asked her to sit down. As I organized those documents, I felt a wave of familiarity and purpose. The formulas, the notes, the clarity of each written line were like rediscovering an essential part of myself. I quickly solved the problem and saw the relief in her eyes. "Wow, you have no idea how much this helps me," she said, almost in tears. The news spread quickly. Soon other employees started showing up with their questions. Pensions, loans, overdue bills. I was back at work in a different way, but with the same sense of importance and belonging I had in the past. In that environment that once seemed cold and distant, I began to build true connections through my knowledge. With every smile of gratitude, one of my own wounds seemed to close a little more. I wasn't just an old woman in a nursing home, I was useful again. The spark in my eyes was back. Sarah came to me one morning, visibly shaken, with a folder full of documents in her hands. "Alice, could you take a look at this?" she asked, her voice trembling. I sat with her in the garden and opened the papers. Bank statements, collection letters, and a loan agreement with sky-high interest rates. My heart ached seeing the confusion in her eyes. She explained that years ago she had invested in a business that failed, and ever since, she had been trying to pay off debts that only seemed to grow. The tone of shame in her voice moved me deeply. This woman, always so kind and cheerful, was now carrying a silent weight that few noticed. I knew I couldn't ignore her request for help. My accountant instincts kicked in immediately, but I realized this situation wouldn't be simple. There were many outstanding issues, accumulated interest, and errors that would require a detailed analysis. Even so, I looked her in the eyes and promised to try. "You're not alone in this," I assured her, trying to convey confidence. She smiled faintly, but I noticed the anxiety hidden in her expression. For Sarah, this was more than a financial problem. It was an emotional wound, a sense of failure that still haunted her. I had to find a solution not just for her, but also for myself, as I was learning to trust my own abilities again. Her case was more complicated than I had imagined. Back in my room, I spread the papers out on the table and felt a pit in my stomach. Was I still capable of handling something so complex? It had been years since I had worked professionally, and now I held a real challenge in my hands, with consequences for someone who trusted me. For a moment I thought about giving up, afraid of disappointing her. But then I remembered why I had agreed to help. Sarah had extended a hand to me when I arrived, with her welcoming smile and genuine friendship. I couldn't abandon her when she needed me most. I took a deep breath, organized the documents by date and type, just like I used to in my old office, and dove into the analysis. The hours passed, and the more I studied the numbers, the more the old feeling of competence returned. It was as if my neurons were reorganizing themselves to rediscover that version of me who knew how to solve problems. Despite the fear, a thread of excitement emerged. I still knew how to do this. I called Helen to ask for some legal and financial counseling contacts available at the nursing home. With the right information, I realized there was a possible path for negotiation. I just needed the courage to present the solution to Sarah, even if it was difficult for her to hear. I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling the pressure of the challenge and the importance of not failing. I couldn't let her down. The next day I asked Sarah to talk. I explained that her contract had abusive clauses, and that we could request a judicial review, as well as negotiate a reduction in the accumulated interest. I showed her a detailed plan with clear deadlines and steps that would allow her to pay off the debt in an organized manner. Her eyes filled with tears as I spoke. With the support of Helen and the nursing home's partner legal department, we managed to start the renegotiation process. To my surprise, the bank responded positively to the first settlement proposal. Sarah stood by my side during every call, listening intently, and slowly the tension in her shoulders began to fade. It was like watching someone breathe a sigh of relief for the first time in years. When I delivered the final result, showing that her payments had been reduced by almost half, she put her hands to her face, overcome with emotion. "Alice, I don't even know how to thank you," she said, her voice choked. I smiled, holding back my own emotions because deep down it was a victory for me too. Helping Sarah not only solved a financial problem, but also reinforced my sense of purpose. I wasn't just surviving in that nursing home. I was making a difference. She hugged me, crying with relief. One afternoon, as I was reviewing some spreadsheets for other residents, I was surprised by a familiar presence in the hallway. David, my eldest son, was there, in an impeccable suit and with a serious expression. For a second, I thought it was just a visit to see me, but I soon realized there was another reason. He was holding a leather folder with documents, and his gaze avoided mine. Helen greeted him politely and left us alone in an improvised meeting room. The initial silence was heavy. There was so much unsaid between us. I had hoped to hear some kind word, perhaps a belated apology for the way I was brought to the nursing home. But he seemed uncomfortable, as if he were about to confess something. He adjusted his tie and opened the folder, showing me charts and financial reports. "Mom, I need to talk to you about business," he said, without beating around the bush. That sounded strange. A son who had put me here was now coming to discuss professional matters, as if I were an available resource, not a wounded person. I remained calm, but my heart sped up. I sat up straight, remembering the strength I had been regaining. If he was here, he needed something that only I could offer. And that, in a way, gave me an unexpected sense of power. His gaze avoided mine. David took a deep breath before continuing. "My company is going through serious difficulties," he confessed, with a sincerity I didn't expect from him. He showed me loss reports and a worrying cash flow. As he spoke, I noticed the tension in his shoulders, the same weight I had so often seen in clients in the past. But now it was my own son. I wanted to feel angry, but my instincts as a mother and a professional took over. The pain of abandonment was still there, but there was also a genuine desire to help him. He looked at me with tired eyes, more humble than I remembered, and said, "I need your help, Mom." That word, "Mom," sounded different, almost like a plea for reconciliation. There was a long silence between us, a moment where the past and present collided. I saw in him not just the distant businessman, but also the little boy who once ran to me with scraped knees seeking comfort. This contrast disarmed me. I could have refused, could have let him deal with his mistakes alone. But something bigger was happening. He was seeing me again, not as a burden but as someone of value. This change moved me deeply, as if a crack were beginning to close. "I need your help, Mom." I took a deep breath, trying to sort through the emotions flooding me. "I'll help you, David," I replied firmly. "But I want to make something clear. You will treat me with respect, and this collaboration will be professional, not a favor from you or me." He was silent for a moment, perhaps surprised by my stance. But then he nodded, agreeing with every word. I took the documents and started noting critical points, already thinking of possible strategies. My brain worked like it used to, fast and organized, and that brought a quiet pride. David, in turn, seemed different. There was less arrogance in his expression and more gratitude, as if he finally saw who I was beyond being his mother. As we discussed deadlines and possibilities, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't just a business agreement. It was a redefinition of our relationship. I was no longer the elderly mother he decided to put in a nursing home. I was the professional he now trusted. When we finished, he extended his hand for a firm shake. I returned it, looking him directly in the eyes, feeling a strength I hadn't remembered having in a long time. It was clear that something fundamental had changed. This time I was in control. Patrick, the nursing home administrator, had always been a reserved and skeptical man regarding internal initiatives. That's why I was surprised when I saw him standing at the doorway, quietly observing as I helped another employee with their finances. His eyes followed my every move, every word explaining calculations and payment deadlines. It was as if he were evaluating not just my work, but also my ability to transform that environment. He approached, asking to see some reports on the volunteer services I had been providing. I showed him the growing number of people helped and the satisfaction each one felt with the results. Patrick flipped through the papers, his expression impassive at first. But little by little, I saw his lips curve into an almost imperceptible smile. That was worth more than any verbal praise. "I never imagined something like this could work here," he said, still surprised. The honesty in his tone made me smile back. It was good to see recognition coming from someone who, at first, saw me as just another resident with no prospects. That moment reinforced that I was making a real impact. Patrick said goodbye with a discreet nod, but before leaving, he looked back, still smiling. That was etched in my memory. He finally smiled at me. The next morning, Helen came into my room, excited, holding a paper with the nursing home's letterhead. "Alice, we have a proposal for you," she said, barely able to contain her enthusiasm. It was an official invitation to teach a personal finance course to residents and staff. For a moment, I thought it was a joke, but Helen's serious and confident look told me otherwise. I sat on the edge of the bed trying to absorb the idea. Teach a course? To teach in a structured way, with everyone looking to me as a reference? Part of me swelled with pride, but another part felt a flutter of nerves. After all, it had been years since I had taken on such a position. Helen reassured me. "You have the knowledge and the teaching skills, Alice. People trust you. This could change lives in here." Her words touched something deep inside me, an echo of the professional I thought I had left behind. I took a deep breath and accepted, even with my heart pounding. As I signed the official acceptance, I realized something important was happening. I wasn't just useful. I was being recognized as someone capable of teaching, of inspiring. I could hardly believe it. The first day of class was a challenge. I prepared carefully, creating simple materials and practical examples to make it easier to understand. At first, the students, residents, and staff were shy, but they soon opened up with questions and personal stories. The interaction was intense, full of discoveries and laughter. At the end of the class, I felt a different energy run through the room. Hope. As the weeks went by, demand for the course grew. People who had never been interested in finances before were now coming to me for tips on budgeting, basic investments, and even how to open a small savings account. Word of mouth spread quickly, and soon I had a waiting list. Patrick appeared again, this time with a proud look on his face, praising the positive change in the nursing home community. He said the course was creating a new atmosphere, where everyone felt more confident and independent. That moved me deeply. I had arrived here feeling useless and disposable, and now I was a source of learning and transformation. I realized with a silent smile that I had recovered something essential, my passion for helping people through knowledge, and with it my purpose. It was official, I was back in the game. The days passed, and my small volunteer accounting service grew to the point of becoming indispensable. It was then that Patrick called me to his office. On his desk was a contract formalizing my business within the nursing home. I looked at the document, feeling a mix of surprise and pride. I never imagined that, at 68, I would be signing something that represented a new professional beginning. Patrick explained that the space and resources would be provided, acknowledging my positive impact on the community. My hands trembled slightly as I held the pen, but not from insecurity, it was pure emotion. Every line of that contract seemed to reaffirm that I had value, that my experience could transform lives. I signed slowly, absorbing the symbolic weight of that moment. It was much more than an agreement. It was a reclamation of my dignity and my independence. The simple sound of the pen scratching against the paper sounded like freedom. When I finished, Patrick smiled openly and sincerely. "Welcome officially to the team, Alice," he said. And I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. The contract felt like a passport to freedom. On the same day my business was formalized, David and Hillary came to visit. I took them to my new office with a small plaque on the door. "Accounting services, Alice Collins. They were silent for a moment, as if they needed to process this new reality. I, who had been considered a burden, now had my own business. David observed the organized papers, the computer turned on, and a calendar full of scheduled appointments. Hillary, with teary eyes, smiled proudly. "Mom, this is incredible," she said, and her voice sounded different, filled with genuine admiration. It was the first time in a long time that I felt their recognition. I told them how it all started, from a simple favor for a colleague to the personal finance course. They listened in silence, absorbing every detail. When I finished, David took a deep breath, and for an instant, his eyes shone with emotion. His usual coldness seemed to have melted away. I said nothing more than a simple, "This is how I'm moving forward." And it was enough. An invisible weight seemed to have lifted between us. David looked emotional for the first time in years. The news spread quickly, and in a few days we organized a small celebration in the nursing home's main hall. Residents, staff, and even some family members came to celebrate the formalization of my business. Helen gave a touching speech about the importance of new beginnings, and Tommy, with his characteristic humor, got laughs from everyone. As we cut the cake and raised a toast, I looked around and saw happy faces, each one reflecting a different story of resilience. But for the first time, I felt that I wasn't just a spectator of these stories, I was a protagonist. People came to hug me, thanking me for inspiring them to believe in new possibilities, regardless of age. When the party ended, I stayed for a few minutes alone, soaking in the moment. I had arrived at the nursing home believing my life was over, and now I was celebrating a new beginning with friends and family. My chest filled with a feeling I hadn't felt in years, true pride. I smiled, thinking of the journey I had taken. This wasn't just a professional victory, but an emotional one too. I was no longer the Alice who was left here. I was the Alice who chose to start over. I was no longer a burden. I was an inspiration. Hillary sought me out early one morning with a different expression, softer, almost childlike. We sat in the garden, and she took a few seconds before speaking. "Mom, I need to apologize," she said, her voice trembling. My heart clenched as I never imagined I would hear those words so sincerely. She lowered her eyes, avoiding my gaze as she continued. She told me how she felt pressured by David's decision to put me in the nursing home, and how she regretted not defending me. She said she thought of me every night, and that the guilt was eating her up inside. Her words didn't come with justifications, but with a genuine plea for forgiveness. I saw the truth in her eyes. I took her hand and squeezed it gently. I had also held on to resentment, but seeing my daughter so vulnerable brought an unexpected peace. Tears began to roll down her face, and I felt an immense need to hug her. For a moment we were just a mother and daughter, trying to mend an old wound. I hugged her tightly, feeling our hearts race and our pains mix into something new. Reconciliation. It wasn't just about the past. It was about choosing a new path together. Sincere tears filled her eyes. Days later, David asked to speak with me in my office. His expression was softer than usual, as if something had changed in him too. He sat before me, took a deep breath, and said, "Mom, I'm proud of you." For a moment I was speechless. That sentence carried years of silence and distance, broken in a second. He talked about how impressed he was with my ability to turn pain into strength, to create a business within the nursing home, and to still inspire other people. I was wrong about a lot of things, he admitted. His words were more than a compliment. They were a profound acknowledgement of my value as a mother and as a professional. I felt a different warmth in my chest, a feeling that something was truly changing between us. There were still hurts, but now there was room for respect and admiration. For the first time, I looked at David and saw not just my son, but a man trying to reconcile with his own history. I held his hand, smiling tenderly. "Thank you, David. That means a lot to me." He returned the smile, and in that gesture, I realized we were building a new, healthier, and truer relationship. He said, "I'm proud of you." With time, I realized that the storm of emotions was calming inside me. The conversations with Hillary and David didn't erase the past, but they brought something I hadn't expected: lightness. It was as if an old weight, carried for years, had finally been lifted. I felt my body more relaxed, my breathing calmer, my heart more at peace. Walking through the nursing home garden, I thought about how complex family relationships are. full of flaws but also opportunities for new beginnings. For a long time I thought I had lost my family forever, but now I realized we were all learning to find each other again, on new terms. Helen passed by and commented on how much more serene I seemed. I smiled and thanked her because it was true. Inside me there was a sense of a cycle closing and a new one opening. Not only had my professional life been reborn, but my emotional life was also flourishing. As I watched the flowers around me, I realized that my story with my family was being rewritten. And this time without resentment, without weight, just with the will to move forward. Family had a new meaning. The workload grew so much that I could no longer handle it all by myself. It was a good problem to have, but a challenge nonetheless. After some thought, I decided to hire 2 assistants from among the residents themselves. Clara, a former secretary who was organized and patient, and Miguel, a former banker with a sharp mind. Both were excited to feel useful again. We set up a small structure with additional desks, computers, and a more professional service routine. The once quiet environment now had a different energy, full of movement and purpose. I trained Clara and Miguel with dedication, passing on my experience while learning new ways to lead. Seeing these people rediscover their own usefulness filled me with pride. It was like a reflection of my own journey. A late rebirth, but one full of meaning. Every completed service represented more than just numbers. It was about restoring dignity to those who felt forgotten. When I looked at the small team I had formed, I realized how much my life had changed since the day I entered here against my will. I had built something solid, something that mattered. I never thought I would come this far. Tommy and Sarah, my first friends at the nursing home, began to participate more and more in the business's activities. Tommy had a unique way of dealing with people, using humor to break the ice with clients. Sarah, on the other hand, had a natural talent for organizing documents and customer service, becoming a sort of right-hand woman. It wasn't long before they both became informal partners, helping out during peak hours and offering valuable suggestions. It was funny to think that it all started with small conversations in the hallway, and now we were working together. Between laughs and old stories, the work environment became light and warm. I realized we were forming more than a team, we were creating a support network. Each of us had faced our own pains, and now we were rising up together. The sense of belonging grew every day. During our breaks, we talked about old dreams and future plans. For the first time, I felt that life in the nursing home wasn't just a refuge, but a space of real possibilities. It was more than work, it was friendship. Over time, our small business attracted attention from outside the nursing home. Local newspapers came to do stories, highlighting the initiative as an example of senior entrepreneurship. People began to visit the place not just out of curiosity, but in search of inspiration. The nursing home, once seen only as a waiting room for the end of life, began to be recognized as a place of innovation. Patrick, the administrator, could hardly believe what he was seeing. "I never thought this place could be associated with entrepreneurship," he said, smiling. Staff and residents were proud to be part of something that was changing the image of aging and showing that life can be reinvented at any age. The new demands brought even more clients, and the sense of belonging in the nursing home grew like never before. Seeing other residents dreaming again, talking about personal projects, moved me deeply. It had all started from a deep pain, but now it was transforming into hope. As I closed up the office at the end of another productive day, I thought about the entire journey, from that difficult moment of abandonment until now, when I was leading something bigger than I ever imagined possible. And it all started with a rejection. The big day had arrived. The new space for my business within the nursing home was ready, with new furniture, modern computers, and a cozy consulting room. Patrick organized an inauguration event, inviting residents, staff, and even local officials. The main hall was decorated with flowers and a banner that read, "Entrepreneurship has no age." I walked through the space feeling a mix of pride and nervousness. Every detail reminded me of how much my life had changed since my arrival. Helen and Sarah managed the reception, while Tommy entertained the guests with his characteristic good humor. The atmosphere was charged with positive expectation, something I never imagined I would witness. When the symbolic ribbon was cut, applause filled the hall. My heart raced, and for a moment I felt my eyes well up. I was no longer the woman who arrived here feeling disposable. I was a leader, a creator of opportunities. Patrick gave a brief speech, praising my efforts and highlighting the importance of believing in new beginnings. When he finished, everyone stood up and applauded with enthusiasm. The applause filled the room. After Patrick's speech, I was invited to the improvised stage. My heart was pounding, but as I looked out at so many dear faces, I felt a new courage. I held the microphone and took a deep breath before I began. I told them how I arrived there with fear and pain, thinking my story was over, and how I discovered strengths I didn't even know I still had. I spoke about the power of experience, of reinvention, and of the support I received within the nursing home. I told them how, even in a place where many see an end, I found a beginning. I saw in the eyes of those present that my words resonated, especially among the older ones, who smiled with emotion. If there's one thing I've learned, I said, it's that it's never too late to rewrite our story. Everyone here has something valuable to offer, and as long as there is life, there will be an opportunity to start over. I paused. The reverent silence that followed was as powerful as any applause. Then I raised a glass of sparkling wine and finished. May this new space symbolize not only my work, but the dreams of all of us. And the hall erupted in applause again. It's never too late to rewrite our story, I said. The party continued with music, laughter, and hugs. Helen and Sarah danced cheerfully with some of the residents, while Tommy told jokes and took funny pictures with everyone. I saw David and Hillary talking to each other, without the tension of before, and that brought me an unexpected joy. It was as if every broken piece of my life was being carefully glued back together. Many came to hug me, thanking me for my example and for the courage to start over. Every word of encouragement reinforced in me the certainty that my life had gained a new meaning. The nursing home, once a symbol of abandonment, was now a stage for achievements and celebrations. As I looked around, I saw smiling faces, hands intertwined, and a climate of collective hope. It was more than a party, it was a celebration of life. A few weeks after the inauguration, I received an unexpected phone call from a local journalist. He wanted to write a story about me and the impact of my business on the nursing home. I agreed with a mix of pride and nervousness. On the day of the interview, I told my story, from the initial abandonment to the creation of my business. His notes seemed to capture not just the facts, but the emotion behind every word. When the article came out, I was surprised to see my photo on the front page of the newspaper with the headline, "At 68, she started over." I held the copy with trembling hands, feeling a mix of gratitude and disbelief. This wasn't just a news story. It was a symbol of how life can change when we choose to face our fears. Residents and staff brought copies for me to autograph, something I never imagined doing at my age. The story spread quickly, generating positive comments and invitations for interviews on radio shows and at small community events. Looking at that newspaper made me reflect on how it all began from a moment of deep pain. And yet, there I was, a symbol of a new beginning. My photo was on the front page. At 68, she started over. Days after the publication, I began to receive unexpected visitors. Young entrepreneurs who wanted to hear my opinion. At first, I found it amusing. After all, I saw myself as just someone trying to rebuild her own life. But they came with notebooks and serious questions about management, motivation, and perseverance in difficult times. I shared with them my experience of turning a moment of rejection into an opportunity. I talked about resilience, about how every failure can be a stepping stone to something greater. They listened attentively, taking notes, and it made me smile in a way I hadn't smiled in a long time. Some even asked to come back again, creating a sort of informal mentorship circle. I never imagined that my life, which once seemed like a burden, could inspire those at the beginning of their journeys. The feeling was indescribable. I had become a role model. When I saw one of these young people thank me with tears in their eyes, I realized something profound had changed. The tables had turned. Alone in the garden one late afternoon, I looked at the horizon with a sense of peace. I thought about everything I had lived through. The abandonment, the pain, the loneliness, and then the rebirth, the friendship, and the rediscovery of my worth. Aging with purpose is more than just keeping busy. It's having a reason to wake up every day with hope. Age has taught me that there is no right or wrong time to change course. What exists is the courage to try, even when the world seems to say otherwise. Every wrinkle on my face carried a story of resilience, of losses, and of achievements. I felt proud of who I had become. Not just for the business I created, but for the way I learned to forgive, to reconcile, and to inspire others. Life, I realized, didn't have a finish line. It had curves, detours, and infinite new beginnings. I smiled, letting the wind touch my face gently, and I thought, my life hadn't ended at the nursing home. It had begun there. Now, I'm curious about you who have heard my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever gone through something similar? Support the channel by subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing this video. I'm leaving another story on the end screen that you'll also enjoy, and it will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.